الحمد لله رب العالمين حمدا كثيرا طيبا طاهرا مباركا فيه وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم حبب إلينا الإيمان وزينه في قلوبنا وكره إلينا الكفر والفسوق والعصيان واجعلنا من عبادك الراشدين. All praise is due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and peace and blessings be upon His beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Continuing inshallah with the Khilafah of Umar ibn al-Khattab radiyallahu anhu wa ardah. And we mentioned last week, or we were mentioning last week, with regards to the financial institutes in the Khilafah of Umar ibn al-Khattab radiyallahu anhu, and how the Khilafah and on what the Khilafah run. Because as we mentioned, that any institution, any Khilafah, any country needs a income to run that institute, to run that country, to run that Khilafah. And the way that Umar radiallahu anhu, the way that he developed the different institutions within the Khilafah and was able to control and to manage the income and the financial income into the Khilafah, and to be able to not only increase from the income, but to put strategies to how to use this income, not only for the generations that were at his time, but to benefit the generations to come after him. And that was seen mostly in the way that he dealt with al-Kharaj, which was the large and the vast areas of Iraq and Sham that were open during his times. And instead of cutting it up and giving it out amongst the Mujahideen, he left it for the people who were there, and they would pay what is called Kharaj. And they would pay what is called like a tax on leaving, or their land remaining with them. They pay a tax to the Khalifa, and they pay a tax to the Khilafah and to the Baytul Mal. And the same thing with Al-Jizya, which is a tax also paid upon the non-Muslimin, those who were living under the protection of the Muslimin. And then you had the Muslimin, they pay zakat. And many people, as we mentioned, they attack the concept of jizya, where jizya is a concept that is parallel to zakat. Zakat is on the Muslimin, al-jizya is on the non-Muslimin. And zakat, in the majority of times, is larger, and the number of zakat that the person pays is larger than jizya. Because no matter how much your income increases, the non-Muslimin, Ahlul Dhimma, no matter how much it increases, the amount is one. The jizya, the tax, is one. Not like in zakat. In zakat, the more the person, or the larger number of money that they make that year, the more zakat they have to pay. Because it's a percentage and it's not a fixed number. Jizya is a fixed number. It differentiates from country to country, from land to land, according to the financial status. But it's a fixed number, whereas zakat is a what percentage? You're paying 2.5%. You're not paying a fixed number. So 2.5% with $5,000 is different than 2.5% for $1 million. Whereas 20 dinar for $10,000 is the same if it was $1 million. So that's the difference. So a lot of people, they misinterpret the understanding of jizya, where in reality it's a rahmah to the non-Muslimin. It's a rahmah to the non-Muslimin. Why is zakat more, or why do the Muslimin pay more zakat, or they are comfortable in paying more? Because zakat to us as Muslimin is a form of ibadah, is a form of worship. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he said, Islam, bunya al-Islamu ala khams. Islam is built on 5 principles. Amongst those principles is what? Zakat. Paying the zakat. In the Qur'an, wherever you find salat, الَّذِينَ يُقِيمُونَ الصَّلَاةَ وَيُؤْتُونَ الزَّكَاةَ. Zakat is always brothered and accompanied by salat. It's always with it. Because you have salat is the physical worship, the ibadah, and then you have zakat, the financial ibadah, the financial worship. And the both are always together. So this is very important to understand, that al-jizya is a tax that the non-Muslimin pay and in return they gain the protection of the Muslimin. The protection of the Muslimin. And we mentioned different times in which the jizya is waived. For instance, Abu Ubaidah ibn al-Jarrah, when they heard that a large army was gathering towards the north of Asham from the Byzantines, and they were not able to protect them, he sent out to the governors of those areas to return the jizya that they had paid, and to tell them that we are no longer able to protect you, so here's your money back. Look at the transaction between the Muslims. This was in our contract, this was in our sulh, our treaty that we had, that we protect you. We are not able to do so, take back your money. What was the response of the non-Muslimin to Abu Ubaidah? They said, take the money. Not only that, we said, we ask Allah that you are victorious and that you defeat them. Because if it was them who was over us, first of all, they wouldn't have returned 1 cent, 1 penny to us. Not only that, they would have entered and taken everything we have. And we wouldn't have seen anything. For you to come and to return to us our money, now take it, leave it with you. We hope that you come back and that we live under your protection, and that we live under your ruling, and that we live under your ruling. That's why al-jizya is a very important aspect of Islam that is used in the media the wrong way. People make it as if it is something that is enforced only upon the Muslimin, non-Muslimin, just because they're non-Muslimin. We're just taking it from you because you're non-Muslimin. When it has nothing to do with that. Al-jizya is a tax. Al-jizya is a tax. It's just different names. Different names. And upon the tax, when we pay, if a person pays tax here, there's benefits that you gain in return. The road services, the electricity services, the medical services, Medicare, all of these things, that's from your tax paying. That's from you paying your tax. The same thing with jizya. The person can't think that they're going to live in an area, everything's going to be fixed, everything's going to be done beautiful, and they not pay anything. No, there has to be a tax system. There has to be a tax system. And if you look at the jizya and you look at the tax that we have today, for instance here, the people will tell you, no, we'd rather pay jizya. We'd rather pay jizya than to pay the tax. Because here the more money you make, the more tax you are being taxed. And then you have a gap, and then you have the rich of the rich who pay less tax than we pay. Who pay less tax than we pay. That's why whenever it's a unjust system, that's what happens. When everyone is not on the same ruling and has the same ruling, when Umar radiallahu anhu, even himself, he would say about himself, I am the one, the ruling of Islam is first upon me than it is anyone else. And when he used to give out the money, the sadaqat, he used to give his son less than he would give everyone else. He would give, especially Ahlul Bayt, he would give Al-Hasan wal-Husayn, he would give their wives, he would give the family of the Prophet ﷺ. For instance, he would give them 5,000 dinar. And then when it came to his son, he would give him 3,000. He would say, you are different, you are the son of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Because you are the son of Amir al-Mu'mineen, you get less. You don't get more. You don't get privileges because you're the son of Amir al-Mu'mineen. We mentioned last week that he had been entrusted with the wealth of an orphan. And then he gave that wealth to a man to trade with it. And then when he traded with it and he gained a large profit. So when he inquired about it, Umar radiallahu anhu, when he inquired about how did he gain that large profit, when he inquired and he found out that he was using Umar's name, that he was using, this is the orphan of Umar radiallahu anhu. This is entrusted by Umar. Umar has been entrusted with this orphan. So the people would what? would trade more. When he heard that, he returned all the profit to Bayt Mal al-Muslimin. And he took the money of the orphan and he took it back and he started all over again. Whenever a governor would be in a position and he would increase, his wealth would increase every year, he'd tell him, come. Where'd you get this money from? How did you make this money? And he would take a portion of it for Bayt al-Mal al-Muslimin. And he'll start with himself before others. So that's why it was very important for us to understand the financial institutions. And that's why we talked about many of these aspects. The financial institution, the infrastructure, the judiciary system within the Khilafah, all of this to understand how these Khulafa, they run the Khilafah. And they run the system and they run the country. Inshallah ta'ala, we'll be beginning from these lessons forward with the conquests and the openings that took place during the Khilafah of Umar ibn al-Khattab. And we always end the history of the Khalifa with the conquests. And we will mention the conquests. There are two main areas, the East and Iraq and Persia. And these conquests during the time of Umar were the most important conquests that were done in the time of the Muslimin. And under the leadership of Umar ibn al-Khattab as the general leader, the Khalifa of the Muslimin. And each and every Khalifa that came after built upon the conquest of the Khalifa before him. Yani before Umar ibn al-Khattab, which was the first stage of entering into Al-Iraq and Al-Sham, these two areas that prior to the death of the Prophet ﷺ were unknown land with regards to army. They had never entered. The furthest they got to was Tabuk, which is on the outskirts of Saudi Arabia today and Jordan. That was the furthest the Muslimin had reached. And then during the Khilafah of Umar, or during the Khilafah of Abu Bakr, a great name came onto the scene. And this name remains until the Khilafah of Umar radiallahu anhu. And he passes away in the Khilafah of Umar. This name is Al-Muthanna. Al-Muthanna ibn Haritha radiallahu anhu. وأرضاه من التابعين. He's not from the Sahaba, he's from the Tabi'een. Al-Muthanna ibn Haritha is a Iraqi. He's an Iraqi Arab. In Iraq you have the Arabs and you have the Persians. The Persians in Iraq, or the Arabs in Iraq, were following the Persians. And the ones on the outskirts in Jordan, Jerusalem, were following the Byzantines and the Romans. So they were split up into two. Al-Muthanna ibn Haritha, he was the one during the lifetime of Abu Bakr who encouraged Abu Bakr to begin entering into Al-Iraq and to begin the conquest of Al-Iraq. And Al-Muthanna, he was the one who was most knowledgeable of the lands of Iraq, the geography of it, the different areas, where to attack, what to do. He had the most history of fighting with the Persians. The Muslimin prior to it had no history of fighting with the Persians. And you're talking here about one of the two most powerful armies that were around that time. Persia, Romans. And the Muslimin had no history of fighting with them. And they didn't have anything to build off. Any person who is a military or who is a general and wants to fight someone, you have to know your enemy. You have to know how they fight, what they do. The Muslimin had no history. Al-Muthanna, he had history. So he was placed in Al-Iraq. And Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, who was appointed as the leader of the armies of Iraq at the time of Abu Bakr? None other than Khalid bin Walid. Khalid bin Walid radiallahu anhu, he was the initial one who entered into Iraq. And he did it in a time that we mentioned that was amazing. The amount of time that he entered into Iraq and went around and opened all these lands and came back and had finished his duty, it was in an amazing time. in a time that only the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will allow for something like that to happen. But Khalid ibn Walid radiallahu anhu, after he had finished in Iraq, he was needed elsewhere. He was needed elsewhere. So he had to travel from Iraq to Ash-Sham. From Iraq to Ash-Sham. Now you look at it now, from Iraq to Ash-Sham, it's nothing. At his times, it's a crossing of a desert that no person, no Muslim at that time had crossed. But any job like that, for someone like Khalid ibn Walid, is something that is easy. And with the trust of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with the trust in Allah, Khalid ibn Walid radiallahu anhu, he left Iraq in the hands of Al-Muthanna. And he went from Iraq to Ash-Sham. During that time when he reached to Ash-Sham and he had to help the armies in Ash-Sham, Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu, he passed away. This great Khalifa, this great man, this great companion radiallahu anhu, he passed away in Medina on the 22nd of Jumad al-Akhirah, the 13th year after the hijrah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he was buried next to his beloved one in his dunya. He was buried next to the Prophet, peace be upon him, in the hujrah, in the room of Aisha. And the way that he was always near him in the dunya, when he died, he was buried near the one that he was most beloved, or the one that he loved the most in his dunya. And the Khalifa Umar radiallahu anhu took over. From the first things that Umar radiallahu anhu he took over is that he encouraged the Muslimin to travel to Iraq to join the forces there in jihad. And he stood up in Medina and he made the call out the first day. The first day no one answered, no one got up. The second day he got up and he encouraged the Muslimin to join the forces, join the armies in Iraq to fight for Sabilillah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Second day no one answered also. No one answered the call for jihad. Third day, the same thing. Fourth day, a man gets up by the name of Abu Ubaid al-Thaqafi. Abu Ubaid al-Thaqafi. Abu Ubaid al-Thaqafi, radiallahu anhu, he stands up. And he says, I will go, O Umar, and I will take with me whoever comes from my tribe. And whoever comes with me from my family, from my relatives. So he was the first person to stand up. And as you know, in a situation like this, why didn't the people stand up? The people were scared. The people there were scared. None of them wanted to go to Persia, not knowing what they're facing an empire. So the people, they're on edge. And usually all it takes is for one person to stand up, and you find the rest of the people, they get up. It just takes one person. So as soon as Abu Ubaid, he gets up, another man by the name of Salit, also from a famous tribe, he stands up and he says that I will also go and fight fi sabilillah, and whoever comes with me from my companions and from my people and from my tribe. He says, O Amir al-Mu'mineen, I'm giving myself for the sake of Allah. So do those of my cousins who agree to come and whoever has joined them. So these were the two men who first got up, and then everyone after that started to get up and joined the army that Umar radiallahu anhu was preparing to send to Iraq. Who did Umar radiallahu anhu appoint as Amir? Abu Ubaid al-Thaqafi. The first man to stand up, the first man to get up, even though he wasn't a Sahabi, and amongst the army that got up and who wanted to go to Iraq later on were Sahaba. He appointed Abu Ubaid al-Thaqafi. He said that he will be the Amir. He's the first one to get up. He will be appointed as the Amir of the armies who are going to Iraq. And then he advised this Amir. He said to him, listen to the companions of the Prophet ﷺ and let them have a say in the matter. Let them have a say in what you are doing. Do not rush into decisions, rather take your time. For war cannot be led except by a man who takes his time in making decision and who knows the right time to move. Warfare, al-harb, warfare it's only for the intelligent. the one who is intelligent, the one who hastens, who rushes, usually makes wrong mistakes or usually makes the wrong decisions. So you need to be calm, collected, need to be able to make the right decision when needed and to take the right decision when it's needed. Do not hasten. Nothing prevented me from appointing Salit but his hastiness. Salit was more known for his army conduct. But the only reason he didn't appoint Salit because Salit used to be hasty. He used to rush things. He used to always want to rush things. Being hasty in war, except in cases where the situation is clear, will lead to doom. Will lead to the doom and the destruction of the people. He says, you are going to a land of treachery, betrayal and oppression. To the land of Persia. You are going to people who are audacious in committing evil and know it well. They have forgotten good and become ignorant of it. The people of Persia. So see what you will do, watch what you say, and do not disclose your secrets, for so long as the one who has a secret and is keeping it, he will be safe. But if he does not keep the secret, that will cause his destruction, that will cause his doom. So this was an advice that Umar radiallahu anhu, he gave to Abu Ubaid al-Thaqafi radiallahu anhu. So Abu Ubaid al-Thaqafi, he begins to mobilize his troops towards al-Iraq. Who's leader in Iraq? Al-Muthanna. And the letter is sent to Al-Muthanna when Abu Ubaid al-Thaqafi arrives in Al-Iraq to hand over leadership to him. So this was the second time in the life of Al-Muthanna that he is appointed leader, or he is leader, and then the leadership is given to someone else. First time was given to Khalid ibn Walid. Second time, Abu Ubaid al-Thaqafi is coming to give him. And both of these times, Al-Muthanna is more than happy to listen to the orders of the Khalifa. Because to them, or to him, to Al-Muthanna radiallahu anhu, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be pleased with him, it's very important to read up upon the history of these men. Very important. Al-Muthanna, he wasn't in that position because he wanted to be in that position. He was in that position because him being in that position is the best of benefit that he can do to the Muslimin. If the Khalifa wants me to be somewhere else, if I don't, or if I'm not going to be the general and I'm going to be a soldier, then that's it. I'm going to go in the corner and start crying and to say, no, I only accept to be general, I only accept to be leader, I don't accept anything else. I'm the most knowledgeable of Iraq, I'm the most knowledgeable of the Persians, it should be me. No, Al-Muthanna wasn't like that. Al-Muthanna, the orders came, give the leadership to Abu Ubaid, سمعنا وأطعنا. We listen, we adhere, and we obey, and we follow. These are the orders of Amir al-Mu'mineen. So Al-Muthanna, when the orders came for him, and Abu Ubaid, he came towards Al-Iraq, and he had with him 7,000 soldiers. And then he added to them over 3,000 or 4,000 soldiers. So by the time he reached to Al-Iraq, he had over 10,000 soldiers with him, Abu Ubaid al-Thaqafi. And this is, in the history of the Muslimin, this is a large number. For the Muslimin, this is a large number. For the Persians and the Romans and the Byzantines, this is a small number. To them, a large number is 100,000, 150,000, 200,000. For the Muslimin, 10,000 is a big number for them. And it's a great number for them. But as we always know that the Muslimin never look at what? Never look at the quantity. The Muslimin always look at the quality. The quality of those who are fighting. The quality of those who are on the battlefield. Never the quantity. The quantity is never something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says clearly in the Qur'an. كم من فئة قليلة غلبت فئة كثيرة بإذن الله. How many times did a small group of people be victorious over a large group of people by the order of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? It's all in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَمَا النَّصْرُ إِلَّا مِنْ عِنْدِ اللَّهِ. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says. So as soon as Abu Ubaid al-Thaqafi, he reaches to Al-Iraq, word reaches to Persia before he even reaches there, and 3 armies are sent out from Persia. 1 army to face him from the front, 1 army to face him to go from the behind, and another army to give assistance to them. And there were 3 battles that were fought. And this goes back to the intelligence of Al-Muthanna and the intelligence of Abu Ubaid. Because instead of those 3 armies getting together and fighting the Muslimin, which would have given them a bigger chance, of victory, each of the armies hastened to stand off against the Muslimin, and in that hastiness, as Umar radiallahu anhu he mentioned, was their destruction. So the first army, which is called the Battle of An-Namariq, which is an area called An-Namariq in the south of Iraq, in the 13th year of Hijrah, when Abu Ubaid he first reached to Iraq. What the Persians wanted to do, what Kisra wanted to do, is he wanted to frighten Abu Ubaid. This new leader is coming to Iraq, sent by Khalifa Umar. So the first thing that he wanted to do was to put the fear in the heart of Abu Ubaid. The first thing that happens when you reach to Iraq, Abu Ubaid, I'm going to attack you. Not with 1 army, with 3 armies. And to frighten, to shake Abu Ubaid radiallahu anhu. But what they don't know is that the heart of Abu Ubaid is full of iman. The heart of Abu Ubaid is full of the trust of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And these things don't frighten the believer. One of the beautiful verses, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He reveals regarding the munafiqeen. He says, وَلَوْ أَنَّا كَتَبْنَا عَلَيْهِمْ أَنِ اقْتُلُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ أَوْ اخْرُجُوا مِنْ دِيَارِكُمْ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, before it, He mentions for them to go to jihad, to fight for the sake of Allah. Whenever the verses of the fighting for the sake of Allah would be revealed, the munafiqeen would what? Would complain. The munafiqeen would complain. One, they'll come up with the excuse of, it's too hot. Once they'll come up with the excuse that our houses are awrah, our houses can be attacked, we need to return to our houses. Once they'll come up with the excuse that we don't have enough money, they always come up with excuses. In the Battle of Uhud, they went out with the Muslims, imagine, they went out with the Muslimin in the Battle of Uhud, halfway there, they turned around and they went back. Abdullah bin Ubay bin Salul, with 300 of his followers, left the Muslimin and returned. The numbers was 1,100, went down to 800, the Muslimin, in the Battle of Uhud. So these verses were revealed for that. It said, وَلَوْ أَنَّا كَتَبْنَا عَلَيْهِمْ أَنِ اقْتُلُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ. Said, if we had written upon them to kill yourselves, أَوْ اخْرُجُوا مِنْ دِيَارِكُمْ, or to leave your houses, مَا فَعَلُوهُ. They will never do it. To show you that we've asked them for much less. Fight for sabilillah. So when this verse was revealed, a Sahabi, he stood up and he said, O Prophet of Allah, if you had ordered us to do so, we will do so. He said, O Rasulullah, if you had ordered us to do so, to kill ourselves, or to leave our houses, we will do so and more. We will do so and more. So Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he says in the hadith, he says, إِنَّ مِنْ أُمَّتِي رِجَالًا الْإِيمَانُ فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ كَالْجِبَالِ الرَّوَاسِي. He says, in Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he says that there are men from amongst my nation, the iman in their heart is firmer than the high mountains, is more strong than these high mountains. And this was the iman of the Sahaba, and this was the iman of these men. The similarities like Al-Muthanna and Abu Ubaid Al-Thaqafi. So the first fighting took place and it was intense. It was a very intense fight between the Persians and between Abu Ubaid Al-Thaqafi. But in the end, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He gave victory to the Muslimin. And the leaders of the army of the Persians, they ran away. And they ran away to the next army that was waiting for the Muslimin, that was the nephew of Kisra, in the area that was for the nephew of Kisra. And what was happening here is that the Persians, yani the Muslimin, entered into Iraq. But the number of the Muslimin wasn't a large number. So when they would enter into a city, they would open it, they'll make a treaty, okay, he's going to pay jizya, we'll make a treaty between us, you stay here, and they would continue. So these areas, they would remain in them, the non-Muslimin, and they will be there. There's not enough Muslims to control every single area in Al-Iraq. So they would leave them under the control of themselves. We've got a treaty. If you break the treaty, we'll come. If you leave the treaty, then you can stay doing what you are doing. These areas that there was no Muslims watching over them, they were lured back into following the Persians. And they gathered them and they brought them back to following the Persians, which was the mistake, a great mistake on their behalf. It was a great mistake on their behalf. The Muslimin, whenever the Muslimin enter into an area, there's no such thing as destruction. There's no such thing as wiping out everything, taking everything that the people own, taking everything that is there. Muslimin don't do that. The Muslimin, we fight armies against armies. Armies against armies. And we fight to call to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to call the people to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's very hypocritical when people that tell you, Islam was called by the sword, and Islam only grew and only perished through the sword. But to look at the exact same thing that you are doing. You want to force democracy upon people, you want to force your ways upon people, and then you want to come and tell us that you want to force Islam upon the people. No, we don't force Islam upon the people. We fight for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We stand off with the armies for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then the people are free to follow what they want to follow when it comes to their religion. So it's very, the picture is always painted darkest when it comes to the Muslimin. Look at the Muslimin. Look at the other, like we just mentioned, the jizya, the this, the that. They make up, they use these big words to scare the people. So these areas that had made a treaty with the Muslimin, they made a sulh with the Muslimin, they were called back. And they went under the Persians and they started to fight with the Persians. And this next army was in the area that was run by the nephew of Kisra. The nephew of Kisra. And when they went to there, the Muslimin were able to also defeat the Persians at that area. And then they continued into the battle of As-Saqatiyah, or in Kaskar. And this continued also, Abu Ubaid al-Thaqafi continued with that army after those who had fled and they sought refuge in the city of Kaskar. And when they reached the city of Kaskar, which was the nephew of the Kisra as we mentioned, he went there and he defeated them and acquired a great deal of booty of war and food. In that area there was a type of fruit that the farmers in that area were prohibited from going near. So when the Muslimin, they entered and they freed the areas, the first thing they did was they took those fruits and they distributed to all the farmers who were around. And then when they brought for Abu Ubaid, they brought him food. They said, this is food from a delicacy of our area. This is specific. He said, okay, did you get enough for the whole army? He said, not now, we only have this. He says, when you get for the whole army, then you bring the food for me. There's no difference between me and my army. My army eats, then I eat. My army doesn't eat, then I don't eat. And this is the understanding that they had. And this was the understanding of Abu Ubaid al-Thaqafi, rahimahullah ta'ala. Even to the extent where two leaders, during that battle and the battle before it, two leaders of the Persians were captured by one of the soldiers of the Muslimin. And the soldier of the Muslimin didn't know who he had captured. To him, he just captured a Persian and he's taking him as a prisoner of war. He didn't know who he was. So that prisoner, when he realized that, okay, he doesn't know that I'm one of the leaders of the Persians, I'll make a deal with him. That I'll do such and such, and this is permitted in Islam, to make a deal with the prisoner of war. So when he made that deal and he came to Abu Ubaid, that's the leader of the armies, one of the leader of the armies. He goes, I made a deal with him. I made a treaty with him. And then even though he was the leader of that army, Abu Ubaid, he said, we have to live by the word of that soldier and the treaty that he had given to that man. So he allowed him to go, he set him free. Later on he was captured and he was killed, but at that time, at that moment, he set him free based upon the treaty of a normal soldier. Why? To honor the word of the Muslim. The Muslim gives a word, you honor that word. He didn't know who it was, doesn't matter. You live by that word. The last battle that took place with these armies was in a place called Al-Barusma, also in the 13th year of Hijrah. And this was the last confrontation with these armies by Abu Ubaid al-Thaqafi radiyallahu anhu, and they were two cousins of Nasri, the nephew of Kisra. And when the Persians fought out or stood against the Muslimin, also it was a very intense battle. The commonality in the battles during the time of Umar is that they were all very intense. There was no battle that was just easy. No, the fighting was intense and the fighting was very harsh. And this is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in many verses, that the fighting is going to be harsh. The fighting is going to be, it's not a walk in the park, because the reward for it is so high. The reward for it is so high. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, أَمْ حَسِبْتُمْ أَن تَدْخُلُوا الْجَنَّةِ وَلَمَّا يَأْتِكُمْ مَثَلُ الَّذِينَ خَلَوْا مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ مَسَّتْهُمُ الْبَأْسَاءُ وَالضَّرَّاءُ وَزُلْزِلُوا. In another verse, they were shaken. In another verse, وَبَلَغَتِ الْقُلُوبُ الْحَنَاجِرِ. The hearts reached the throats. You and the person is in such fear, in such, in a state of fear that it's as if the heart's in the throat. The Sahaba, they reached that level. And they were in that position. So the commonality in all of the wars of Persia and then in Asham was that it was intense. It was intense battles. And the Muslimin and the Sahaba who were there with them, they lived up and they fought under these intense times and in these intense battles. So Abu Ubaid, after the intense fight that he had with the Persians, he defeated the Persians. And this was a opening of Abu Ubaid that there's good or there's better things to come, insha'Allah. The first, he reached to Iraq, straight away went into battle, was able to win the first 3 battles that he was faced with, and he was able to destroy them. And this was in a very short period of time. And as we mentioned, they say that from the hastiness and from the greed and the wanting of fame and name, instead of those 3 armies gathering together and fighting the Muslimin, each of them went separately and they were all destroyed separately. Where if they had to be fighting together, they would have had a better chance, But قدر الله وما شاء فعل. This is the qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the divine destiny of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The next battle that Abu Ubaid he went was, which is called the Abu Ubaid's battle of the bridge, Ma'rakatul Jisri, which was, the main factor of it was a bridge. The main factor of it was a bridge. When the leader of the Persian army, he fled from the Muslimin, the Persians regrouped and gathered around Rustum, who was the leader of the Persians at that time. And he mobilized a very large army. One thing you have to remember is that the Persians is an empire that had been around for many years. Many years. So they had numbers, they had weapons, they had storage, they had everything. Numbers to them was nothing. Numbers was very easy. Weapons was very easy. They had weapons in the thousands, in the millions. And this is an empire that was fighting the Byzantine, the Roman Empire. So they were prepared. They were very well prepared. So when we say here, gathered a large army, this is something simple to them. Or this was something that they've been preparing for many years. And that person or that leader was given what was known as the Great Flag, which was made out of tiger skin and was 5-10 meters wide, 5-10 meters long. And this was one of the big flags, the great flag it was called. And they used to use it as a means of putting fear in the hearts of those who opposed them. So the two armies, they meet on one of the rivers. Between that river, there's a bridge. So the Persian army, the Persian leader, he sends to Abu Ubaid, either you cross to us or we cross to you. Now the Muslimin, any person who, the first thing that would come to your mind is like, no, you come to us. We're not going to cross the bridge. You come to us and we'll fight you where we are. Abu Ubaid, he wanted to be the one who takes the first step. He wanted to be the one who takes the initiative. He wanted to be the one who steps up. He didn't want them to think that, look at the Muslimin. So he made the decision, even though Al-Muthanna and other Muslimin had advised him otherwise, but he made the decision to cross the bridge. And when they crossed the bridge, we're not talking like a little bridge, it's a big bridge. But when they crossed the bridge, imagine 10,000, 15,000 soldiers crossing a bridge. So when they reached to the other side, now it's become tight. The return has become tight upon them. And then you have the big army in front of you. And the Persians were known for what? The Persians were known for their elephants. They'll bring the big elephants, they'll have big bells on them, and the reason or the purpose of these elephants and bells was to what? To feed the horses or to scare the horses so that the horses don't come close. When the horse sees the elephant, sees the bells ringing, turns away. So the Muslimin, they crossed over the bridge. The first thing that comes in front of them are the elephants. And when the horses come close, they see the elephants, they hear the bells, they return. And now what had happened is behind the elephants, you have the arrows and you have the spears that are being thrown, and a large number of the Muslimin were killed. A very large number of the Muslimin were killed. So here Abu Ubaid al-Thaqafi now, he's looking back and saying, I shouldn't have made that decision. But it's too late. It's too late. And Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, he taught us never to say law. Never say if. Because law opens the door of the shaitan. Law taftahu bab al-shaitan. It opens the door of shaitan. If I had done that, if I had did this, if I had gather, if. The person spends his day in regret and thinking of what if. The person does a deal, masalan, transaction, and then after it, I should have done it this way, what if? It opens the door for shaitan. It opens the door for the waswasa of the shaitan. So Abu Ubaid, he said, now, okay, we have to think. So he called out to the men, get off your horses and fight on your feet. And he centered the attack against the elephants. And the attack was mainly headed towards the elephants, how to disarm them and how to disarm the people who are on them. Because the people who are on the elephants, like the man who rides a horse, he needs a saddle. The ones who are riding the elephants, they need a saddle, but it's about 10 times bigger, to fit the elephant and to control the elephant. So to attack them. So Abu Ubaid, he led the attack against the elephants. But these here, you are talking about elephants that have been trained. They're not wild. They are elephants that have been trained to do a specific job, to fight. And Abu Ubaid al-Thaqafi, when he attacks these elephants and he tries to cut off the bells and to cut off the saddles that are on them, he is what? He's stuck or he's struck to the ground and he's trampled by the elephant. The elephant steps on Abu Ubaid al-Thaqafi radiyallahu anhu. And that's khalas, that's death. As he's doing that, Abu Ubaid al-Thaqafi, his wife mentions to him a dream before that. His wife mentions to him a dream. She said, I saw you descending from heaven, and your son was with you, and your other son, and your other son, and she mentioned names. So when Abu Ubaid, when she told Abu Ubaid about this dream, he said the shahada. He said, this is a shahada, this is martyrdom. And those who you mentioned after me are the ones who will follow me. So before the battle of the bridge, he had mentioned who is going to be the leader after him. So he mentioned himself first, and then his son, then his other son, and then his other son, and then those whom he saw in the dream from his family. And all of them, one after the other, were martyred on that day. First himself, then his son took the flag and he was struck. Then his other son took the flag, he was struck. And then it continued one after the other until all of them had passed away. All of them were martyred on that same day, the battle of the bridge. From the, subhanAllah, the interpretation of the dream was true. So who takes leadership now? Al-Muthanna, the one who is most knowledgeable of Al-Iraq. Al-Muthanna now, he takes control of the army. Al-Muthanna is wise. He has war strategies. If you look back into the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ, into the battle of Mu'tah, where the Muslimin faced off, the first face-off that happened with the non-Muslimin, the Arabs who were fighting for the Byzantines and the Byzantines themselves. After the three leaders that the Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned himself, Abdullah bin Rawaha, Ja'far bin Abi Talib, and Zayd ibn Thabit, or Zayd ibn Rawaha. The three of them were martyred on that day. And then who took leadership? Khalid bin Walid. Khalid bin Walid now, he has the numbers. Some of them say that the enemy was over 100,000, some of them say there were 40,000, the Muslimin were much less than that. Much less than that. So here Khalid bin Walid now, he's faced with what? With an army in front of him. So what did Khalid do? What did Khalid do? He didn't, die or live or die. No. Khalid bin Walid radiallahu anhu, he knew the strategy of war. So he kept patient that day. He fought off that day. The next day, what did he do? The people, the companions who were on the right, he put them on the left. The ones who were on the left, he put them on the right. The ones who were in the front, he put them at the back. The ones who were at the back, he put them in the front. So the next day, when they came and they fought, the army in front of them, they saw new faces. So what did they think? Reinforcements had come to the Muslimin. So they were shaken. And Khalid radiallahu, as he's doing that, he's slowly backing off. He's slowly retreating until he got a distance and they retreated. And he saved the army radiallahu anhu. Al-Muthanna, he's in a similar situation where he's got the army in front of him, large army. Behind him there is a bridge and the Muslimin are being attacked fiercely. He has to make a decision. One man, he gets up from amongst the army. What does he do? He tries to destroy the bridge. He says, after he tried to do so, or after he did destroy a large portion of the bridge, he said, I didn't want the Muslimin to run away. I wanted them to stay firm. There's times where you need to stay firm, and there's times where you need to retreat and regather and to reform yourself. So Al-Muthanna, when he saw this, he called this man. He says, why are you doing so? He says, so that the Muslimin don't run away. He says, who gave you the permission to do so? We are trying to retreat the Muslimin. We are trying to turn them back, to save them. Because there's no way that we are going to be able to be victorious in this battle. That's why they say that the one who is a war strategic, he knows which battles to let go. He knows which battles to retreat. It's not a loss. He knows which battles that it's best to just walk away. That's why the person who's smart, he knows which fight to walk away from and which fight to go into. I know that, okay, this fight, it's not going to happen for me. So I retreat. And I regather myself, I reform, get the Muslimin, get the army together again, then I attack again. It's not just about attacking, fighting. No, there has to be strategy, there has to be knowledge. So Al-Muthanna, after the martyrdom of Abu Ubaid al-Thaqafi, Al-Muthanna takes leadership of the army of the Muslimin, and he slowly begins to retreat. And you have to remember now there is a river that the Muslimin have to cross. So they are crossing this river and they are retreating, and he made sure that he was the last one. Al-Muthanna, he made sure that he was the last one. When he made sure that everyone else had retreated, everyone else had turned back, then he returned and he left. And he was able to save as much as he could from the Muslimin. Over 4,000 Muslimin were martyred in that battle. Over 4,000 Muslimin were martyred. When you look at 4,000, you think it's not a big number in our days today. 4,000 from an army that is just over 10,000, it's a big number. It's nearly half of your army. So they retreated, and they were able to regather themselves, and they continued to retreat. And that's the strategy that the person has to have, as we mentioned, is to know when to attack, when not to attack. And this was, again, Al-Muthanna took the leadership of the army of Iraq because he had to take the leadership and no one else was there and able to take the leadership. And that's why it is very important to have a strong leader who can increase from the morals of the Muslimin. That's why every time the Muslimin, whenever the Muslimin are faced with a dilemma, whenever the Muslimin are faced with a calamity, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He always sends them a way out and a means to get out of that which they are in. It's just upon the Muslimin to recognize it and to know where that way out is. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not going to hold your hand and take you out. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to show you the way and show you how to get out. And then it's upon your wisdom, your intelligence, your ability to see, to follow that way. And that's how it is. That's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He do such and such and you attain such and such. But you have to do your part. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He wanted, He willed, and Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he could have been given the kingship over all of the world. With Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saying, kun fayakun. And it would have happened. But it's not like that. That's not how it works. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he had to put the work in. He had to put the effort in. He had to put the time in. The sleepless nights standing in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The sleepless nights supplicating to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Engaging in warfare himself. The Sahaba radiallahu anhum, they used to say that on the battlefield we used to stand, shield ourselves with the Prophet, peace be upon him. On the battlefield he was a lion, because that's where you need to be, a lion. Off the battlefield he was a very gentle and kind person, that a little girl would grab his hand and walk with him, and he'll continue walking with her until she leaves his hand, or until the child leaves his hand, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. That's why we mentioned before, from the advice of Umar, is you need to be firm and strict without harshness. There's no need to be harsh. You need to be firm, you need to be strict. And you need to be lenient and gentle, but without weakness. Without weakness. Today it's the opposite. Today, I give the example of the parents. Today the parents want to be firm, want to be strict on their child, but at the same time they want to be harsh. At the same time they are harsh to their children. When the child doesn't get up and pray, and this many times, the child hasn't prayed, he'll get hit. Or he's a grown man. There's children that are grown men, 17, 18, 19 years old. The father, didn't you pray? No, I didn't pray. And he'll slap him. Or he'll use very strong words against that child. The idea is correct. You need to be firm, you need to be strict. But the means and the way of doing it is completely wrong. And then the opposite is the same. You want to be gentle, want to be kind, but with weakness. Doesn't matter, let her go and do what she needs to do. Let her get to know the man in the means that is appropriate for our time. Let her do this, let her do that. She's still young, he's still young. For everything else, they are not too young. But when it comes to Islam and enforcing Islam, they're still young. Seta صغيرة. She's still young. She's like that. Setu صغير in his beard is longer than mine. Setu صغير. He will learn from his mistakes. And they leave it. And they let it go. That's why Al-Muthanna, the leader of the army, firm and strict, but without being harsh. There's no need to be harsh. The same thing goes for everything. Marriage, for instance. The husband, firm and strict, doesn't mean that you have to be harsh. Doesn't mean that you have to disrespect your wife. Doesn't mean that you have to dishonor your wife. Doesn't mean that you have to raise your hand and hit your wife, which in itself is haram. In itself is haram. You have husbands and wives today sit there and swear at each other. If you, no if you, no if you. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. You're this, you're that, but you're this, but you're that. Your mother, your father, you're this. A'udhu billah min shaitan rajim. And then at the end of the night they go and they sleep with one another. عاد حلة بقى. It becomes normal, it becomes natural. And then it continues. It continues. And I can never imagine, wallahi, I can never imagine. Never imagine. And Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam never did it. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, Aisha radiallahu anha, she says, I lived with him for over 10 years. He never raised his hand once. To his wives, to his slaves, to anyone. Never raised his hand once. One of the slaves, Zayd bin Thabit, the one who lived with him, not the slave, the orphan child, who lived with him, he said, I lived with the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. He never said, for something that I didn't do, why didn't you do it? Or for something that I did, why did you do it? Imagine. This is who we need to learn of. That's why Al-Muthanna, he had these qualities. They lived with the Sahaba, they learned from the Sahaba, they learned these strategies, how to deal with the armies, how to live the morals, the morale of the army. And all done in a way that pleases Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You have to be harsh and firm. You have to be firm and strict, but you don't have to be harsh. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, yassiru wa la tu'assiru, bashiru wa la tunaffiru. Make it easy, don't make it hard on the people. Give them the glad tidings. Don't give them to make them run away from Islam. Make them run away from the deen. You have to do this, it's very easy sometimes, wallahi, it's very easy sometimes just to give the rulings. This is the ruling 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But the harder way or the harder thing in that is, how do I get that person to follow those orders? That's where the hikmah comes in. Anyone can tell you, you have to do this, you have to do that, you have to do this, you have to do that. That's the ruling of Islam. Assalamu alaikum, see you later. That person turns around and like, Ruh anta in your Islam. That's how they think. The wise man is the one, and the wise female is the one who's able to not only give the ruling, but to get that person to follow that ruling. With the hikmah, with the wisdom, with the words. Inna min al-bayani la sihra. Speech is like magic. It can draw the person in. It can change the mentality of a person. وَادْعُ إِلَى سَبِيلِ رَبِّكَ بِالْحِكْمَةِ وَالْمَوْعِظَةِ الْحَسَنَةِ. Wisdom and the good speech, the good words. So Al-Muthanna, he took control of the army of the Muslimin in Al-Iraq. And then the next battle that he was the leader of, which is called the Battle of Al-Buwaib, which is also in the 13th year after the Hijrah of the Prophet ﷺ. So it's a very busy year. Very busy year for the Muslimin in Al-Iraq, in the army of the Muslimin, and in Al-Iraq. And inshallah ta'ala we'll continue next week with the Battle of Al-Buwaib, and one of the greatest battles that took place in Iraq, the Battle of Al-Qadisiyah, which is after the Battle of Al-Buwaib, when Abu Ubaidah ibn al-Jarrah was sent by Umar radiallahu anhu to take leadership of the armies of the Muslimin in Iraq, the great battle, the one that broke the back of the Persians, which is the battle of Al-Qadisiyah, which is one of the main battles and beautiful battles that took place in Iraq and with the Muslimin and the Persians. And inshallah ta'ala, that will be spoken about in the next lesson to come.
I wanna be in Jannah, Jannah, yeah. Jannah, Jannah. Every Muslim dreams to be up in Jannah, 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 Jannah. A pious person's destiny. Inshallah in Jannah, Jannah, Jannah.